Kenny, or would you rather I called you Kenneth?
No, you're just, Kenny is fine.
Or Ken. Maybe we should reveal to the mystified person at home that we're sitting in the, how many levels down are we in the cellar in Washington, D.C.?
2 or 3, I'm sure.
Where
it's like a bomb shelter.
Throng, an entire throng is upstairs waiting for you to appear. I think Crystal Gale is talking to them or
yes.
Performing it. Do you have to top yourself all the time in the record business? Is there that nightmare-making phenomenon where you're only as good as your last hit, or can you miss a few?
Well, Mike Curb, who was Lieutenant Governor of California for a while, who was also in the record business prior to that, told me once, and I think in retrospect it is true, that people don't remember the steps because they never hear them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're too far between hits, they notice that. And you also have a tendency to get out of style. But yes, you do. I think you do need to, you don't have to be number one. That's always been, I guess, one of my real things that I am happiest about myself, is that nothing I've ever done have I had any kind of a burning desire to be number one in. I couldn't care less if I'm number one.
Mm-hmm.
I like to just be, I like to compete. I like to be in the top 10. If I can stay in the top 10 for the rest of my life, then I'm thrilled. You know, the odds against that are pretty astronomical. But
so you don't watch every week to see if you slipped a place? Or,
well, you watch, you know, when you have a record out, you watch the progress of the record because it affects the release date of the next record. But you watch it, and some records disappoint you because you personally believe in them more than others. And then other records that you don't expect anything from, just... And Lucille is a perfect example of that. When we released Lucille, I think we all felt it was going to be a top 5 or number 1 country record potentially. But none of us in our right mind had any possible dream that it would do what it did. I mean, it was not only a number 1 record in the United States, pop, but it went all around the world. It was a number 1 record pretty much around the world. And that's just phenomenal for that.
Well, obviously, if anyone could predict those things, then everyone would be doing whatever it is.
He could work for me, I'll tell you, very quickly.
So much has been made about your good fortune. It's nice to remind people that it wasn't always there. You were not the heir to any great vast sums at birth.
No. As a matter of fact, it was actually, I guess, at about the 6th or 7th grade when I realized that we qualified for the word poor, you know, because it was, in the area that I lived in, everybody was broke. So it's all relative, you know, until you're exposed to something other than what you live in, you feel the whole world is that way. So, but I remember when I went to school, I fell in love with this little girl named Colleen Mays. And I wouldn't know her today if I saw her, I don't guess, but she had the most beautiful pair of white saddle Oxfords. And every day they looked brand new. And here I had holes in my knee and my pants. So I realized that there was another side of this railroad track that I'd lived on over here.
That there was something to aspire to, brand new saddle Oxfords.
So I wear them all the time now, this white and brown saddle Oxford.
You have a philosophy, I think, that probably most people feel they would have if they were in that position, and that is, don't be afraid to spend some money while you have it. Although it's not unique in our, I mean, it's not universal in our business. There are people who will spend a dime or pick up a tab and...
Well, I'll tell you exactly where mine came from, because, you know, having never had money when I was young and not knowing really how to deal with it, when I was, I guess, 12 or 13 years old, there was a guy who lived in our neighborhood that lived down the street from us that was, and we literally lived in the ghetto. It was a housing project, you know. Yeah. And there was a guy who lived down the street from us that was a garbage truck driver. And his garbage truck company went out of business, believe this or not, and he bought the garbage truck from the guy he was driving for. Somehow along the way, he ended up owning 20 garbage trucks. And he ended up investing his money in coal in Kentucky and became literally a multimillionaire. And this would have been in the 40s or early 50s, I guess.
Multimillionaire was a lot of money in those days.
Absolutely. And he still lived in this little ghetto down the street from us. And the moral of this story is, when he was 37 years old, he got run over by a truck and never spent any of his money. He stayed in this ghetto. He was planning for his old age. And a cousin or a nephew that he had never met got all of his money. So to me, what it said to me was that there's a fine balance in enjoying today and preparing for tomorrow. If you overweigh it one way or the other, you're going to get hurt. Because if you prepare too much for tomorrow, you can't enjoy today. And if you enjoy today too much, then there's not going to be anything left for tomorrow. So I think that's really what I try to do. And I try to make investments that I personally enjoy, as opposed to oil wells in Oklahoma City, where, you know, the money doesn't mean anything to me. It's the use of the money that's fun to me.
And that poor man never spent much of his... how was he killed?
He was hit by a garbage truck.
What, no, I was just going to say, was it one of his own fleets? That would have been too...
It was the young nephew who was driving for him.
Drive, yeah. So either enjoy it while you have it or don't get hit by trucks.
Absolutely. Watch where you walk.
Don't step off curbs. There's something I've got to clear with you. I find it so amazing that I figure I must have read it wrong. Luella Parsons, a name that may not mean much to some of our younger viewers, was a gossip columnist in Hollywood who made and broke careers. I met her. She was a semi-literate old bag, and I don't know, I'm amazed that she could write a song, let alone her column, if she did.
You would be very
Is
amazed.
it true that, not to speak ill of the dead, that this old crock actually wrote a song?
She wrote a song that could be one of the worst songs I've ever heard. But I mean, it was my first real venture into musical prostitution is really what it boils down to, because we were recording, I was with this group, a local group in Houston, and the guy named Lou Chudd, who owned Imperial Records, said, okay, I'll give you this record deal, but Luella Parsons has written this song, and you must record this song, because we think it'll get a lot of air and a lot of press if we do this thing, by virtue of the fact that she wrote it, and obviously she would mention it in her column. It was called Kongua, and it was a series of Kongua. It was a series of African chants of some sort. I mean, it was actually so funny when we made it. We weren't sure that it might not be a camp hit. You know, it was so bad.
What did it sound like?
Oh God, it was like Kongua, konnichiwa. I'm surprised I remember this. Kongua, konnichiwa, Kongua, konnichiwa, and that was the good part. And I don't know, it kind of went downhill from there. I mean, it's kind of haunting, isn't it?
Konnichiwa is Japanese. Did she realize this?
Probably. I doubt it.
Where did she get off? Was she loaded one night and decided to write a song?
I have no idea. But, you know, it just proves to me that for the right amount of money, I'll do anything. I couldn't care less.
Are records of Kongua really collector's items now? Do you even have one?
I don't have one. I made lamps of mine, as a matter of fact. I melted them down and stacked them up.
Do you have any nostalgia for the old days? You know, sometimes you'll read the memoirs of somebody in show business written in their middle career, and it seems that the fun they had was before they got too successful, or they missed things they could do before. I think that's really true. I think that it's like anything. Once it becomes a legitimate business, some of the fun is gone. The spontaneity. You no longer have the options that you had when you were young, you know, and I'm not sure that it's altogether that. I'm not sure that it's not just the time of, you know, when I'm 19, you're 18 and 19, and you've got these dreams and these visions of doing things. And you know, the beat-up hotels, and I mean, boy, I could tell you some hotels I've stayed in coming up through this, that's such a great era in my life. And I'm not sure it wasn't the age I was at the time and the dreams that I had that really make it so special to me at this point. There was a time, let's see, there was the New Christie Minstrels. Who said the new minty crystals once in a slip of the tongue? That was,
it wasn't me.
Misty Crystals.
Misty
He
Crystals.
eventually got it. And then the first edition, and I had read, people like to publish this about you, that you were way in debt or something when that, around that time.
When the first edition broke up, yes, the first edition was $65,000 in debt. And by virtue of the way that the group dissolved, I ended up inheriting this great debt. And
you were the responsible one?
I ended up being the, all of a sudden, there were 4 partners when the money was coming in. And somehow when it was over, I was the only remaining partner. I don't know how it happened, but it ended up that way. So for the first 6 months or so after the group broke up, actually it probably took me a year and a half or so, I had a choice between going into bankruptcy or just making agreements with these people to pay these figures off, whatever they were. A lot of them were travel debts that we hadn't counted on, that we had piled up, that came in 30 and 60 days late.
I was wondering,
when you start carrying 7 people around and you fly everywhere you go, it can get very expensive.
Everybody knows that musicians are into drugs, booze, and broads and all that stuff. And do you ever have trouble getting all your drugs and things through customs? Could you explain how that works?
I've been so lucky, and I guess it's from, again, this junior high school I was talking about, that I had a coach named Horace Elrod and another coach named Mr. Goldberg. And when I wanted to play basketball so badly in junior high school, my coach sat me down and he said, you know, if you want to be a good athlete, you shouldn't drink or smoke. So I never drank. I was never a good athlete, but I never drank or smoked. So something good came out of it, you know. But it's amazing how people at certain points in your life can say something to you, a person you respect, and it can totally affect your whole life. I mean,
it hits you at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, at a time when I could have, I guess, gone either way. Everyone else in my class and in my, age group were doing all these things. But I've never been an experimentalist who said, I want to try this and I want to try that. So I think it has never really been a problem for me.
I think I read, may or may not be true, the fact that I read it, as you know, doesn't make it true, that somebody gave you a joint once, you tried it, thought you were fine, and then saw the results. Was that on a TV taping or
I don't know where it was.
something,
I
and you
don't
said,
actually remember ever disclosing that. It happens to be pretty accurate, so it amazes me because I don't remember having ever told a soul that.
I think it was in National Geographic, but I'm not
I like
sure.
the way you make up these things and then trap someone into giving you these answers.
Yeah,
But
you're so malleable.
What happened is that I smoked this joint, and I thought I was fine, and I stood up, and I literally passed out. I literally fell asleep. I mean, and I found out that it doesn't make sense to me. I guess it'd make a great sleeping pill for me.
Yeah. But the coach has, the coach's advice is stuck
that, and I think Kirby Stone. When I was with a jazz group, and coming out of Houston, and we traveled with a group called the Kirby Stone Four, and who was a very big. They had groups with songs like Bauble Fingers and Beads and other show tunes, and they were kind of jazz oriented at the time. And Kirby sat me down one day and he said, "Look, I think you have a tremendous talent, not necessarily musical or vocal or whatever, but I think you have something that you could parlay into a really successful career." I was 21 or 22 at the time. He said, "Well, I'll tell you, the key is you must treat this like a business." He said, every decision you make, assume you are the president of the Bank of America, and make that decision, totally forget the arts, because the minute you get into arts, people make excuses for it. Say, oh, this is show business, it doesn't really matter.
Does that tie in with something you allegedly also said one time, that you said, I think about 2 3/4 to 3 years in this business at one point, and then you began, I think the wording was, you began to program your own destruction, or something very well put like that.
Yeah, I think that what happens is artists in this business normally have a tendency to create their own demise. I think that what happens is...
Program your own demise, that's what it was, yeah.
What happens is you get into this business and you become successful and you say, I'm tired of working, so I'm only going to work 50 days this year. And unfortunately, if you're going to sell records, you must work a minimum of 75 to 100 days in concert, because you can go right behind this tour in the cities that I go to, and you can check record sales. It's unbelievable, because 80% of all records and tapes sold are what they call spontaneously motivated. Either they see you in concert, they turn on the radio and hear it and like it, or they see you on television. People don't drive along and say, wait a minute, I remember a song I want to buy. So you must affect these people. And I don't think I really believed that until Marianne and I went to see Kenny Loggins in Los Angeles one day, and the next day I come home and she'd bought 4 tapes of his. And because she'd heard songs in the show that she'd never heard before, she said, oh, I want that tape. So...
shouldn't they sell them in the lobby then?
A lot of guys do. I happen to...
Seems a little sleazy.
Yeah, I have a real thing about that. As much as I admired Elvis and what he did, the one thing I did not like that Colonel Parker did, I felt, was just bleed those people to the bone. I felt that... I went to see him one day in the Las Vegas Hilton, and it looked like a circus. I mean, they had Elvis teddy bears, Elvis keychains, Elvis this, that, and the other. And I just felt, I sat down, really, I went to all this trouble to sit down and say, how much money could he make off of this? And it was like $2,000 a night or whatever it was. And this is in the Hilton. In a concert like this, it's different. Yeah. But I just couldn't believe that he would allow that of his stature. I think class and quality is so important.
A little tacky, yeah.
I felt so.
Can you imagine a script in which your life could turn out the way Elvis's did?
No.
What would have to be different for... I guess it's an elaborate way of saying what happened to Elvis that you avoided.
I think that, again, I've had more positive influences in my life, and I think my major success came at a later point in my life where I was more capable of handling it. And I think the best thing that ever happened to me was the first edition falling apart and leaving me with that responsibility. Because number one, I think it made a man out of me. I think I had the 2 choices of dumping it back on the people who had been nice to me, who had extended me credit during that period, or saying, look, I was always taught that somehow or other you make this thing work and I will pay you your money. And I think in that respect it helped me. It also taught me that this, this top of the mountain here is temporary. I don't care who you are. I mean, you can only stay there so long. Now, some of us can extend it longer, but ultimately I've got to come down. And I know that. So I think I've approached this business a little differently and maybe a little more intelligently than he did. Not necessarily that I have more intelligence, just that I approached this aspect of it. But I think his came too young.
Could anybody have saved Elvis? Could you have said to him at any point, hey, look, man, you're on the road to destruction and horrors and death?
I'd kind of hate to believe that, because I'd like to believe if I could have, I would have. But I don't know. I think that people choose their own lifestyles, and I'm not sure. I don't really believe in predestiny. I don't believe that this is all pre-programmed somehow or other, because I think there are certain things that you are in control of, and then other things emotionally that you just, I know people that just absolutely cannot get their lives together, and they are very bright people. It's like they are just hell-bent on this path. Wherever it takes them, they're going to go. And you can sit there and say, but don't you see? And they say, yes, I see. Are you going to? No, I'm going fast as I can get there, you know? So I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
You've made some frank statements in print about how you've had a personal price to pay in a way with your, I think with your children from first marriage, was it?
First and third marriage.
All of the career thing really robbed you of some relationship with them that you wish you had and would still like to improve.
It is a shame. And unfortunately, I'm not the only person who's been through this. And I think that what happens is certain people, success is so crucial and so important, and it's like tunnel vision that you can't understand how anyone could not understand how important this is to you. Money was never a thing with me. I mean, any one of my wives, I think, would tell you that whatever money I had, they could have. I couldn't care less about that. But it was just, again, I reiterate, I never wanted to be number one. I just wanted to be up there with the big boys, you know. And it was a constant, I guess it was more of a fear of failure than a need to succeed that scared me. To end up not knowing this is all I ever wanted to do was music. So if all of a sudden I was not successful in this and couldn't do it, my God, I might literally have to go to work, you know, and that word just scared me, just jarred me into this. But I think that at times when I made decisions, I made them strictly on what was best for my career, not necessarily best for my family. I'm not even sure that I didn't go into those marriages. I think I went into them loving the women I was involved with, but somehow knowing that down the line that crossroad was going to come and knowing which way I'd go. And I think that's the difference between my marriage with Marianne and my marriage with the other people that I've been involved with, you know.
What about a kid who wants to be what you are? Do you tell him just pluck on a guitar from 5 years old? Do you tell him save your money and go to Juilliard, get a formal education?
There's a quick road to success and there's a secure road to success. But it's important that you make these moves by yourself. And I believe that. I think that my mother and my father both tried so hard to talk me out of this business. I was the first person in my entire background, as far back as we can trace, and that goes, we can trace all the way back to my grandfather. So I mean, we don't know where we came from before that. But I was the first person in my entire lineage to ever graduate from high school. So I think it put a tremendous amount of pressure on me because my mother really wanted me to go to college, and she worked very hard. My father worked very hard to put the money for me to go to the University of Houston. I thought I went 2 semesters. She said I went 2 weeks. So somewhere between 2 weeks and 2 semesters are my college credentials with me. But she was particularly disappointed, as was my dad, because the people they associated with music were the old era of country music people who drank beer in beer halls and played for quarters and dimes, and they really wanted me to make something in my life. And I think
that was the most they could imagine you're getting to.
I don't think they even knew this other strata existed.
Yeah. Now, did they both live to see your success? Or?
Yeah, my mother's still alive. My father died about 8 years ago, and he saw the first edition success. He did not see what's happened since then.
Didn't it create a certain amount of family strife when you're one of 8, I think, aren't there 7 brothers and sisters?
I have 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
Yeah. Can you maintain friendship with them when you're such a conspicuous success that they...
Yeah, I feel that I have a great relationship with my family.
Yeah.
I've been able to help some of them, several of them work for me, as a matter of fact. I have 2 brothers who work for me, and my sister and brother-in-law work for me at the farm, you know. So in that respect, it's been great, and I've helped one of my other brothers get into a business in Houston, and I feel a very good relationship with all of them.
What do you do with the fan who says, "Yeah, too good to have a drink with me, I suppose," you know? That kind of, you're into that attitude?
I've really been lucky. I mean, it's amazing. And I'm out there all the time. But I mean, I have people that ask me, you know, want to stop and have a drink, and usually, first of all, I don't have a tendency to be in the places that would have that type of atmosphere, so I don't have that problem. But I have found that most people, if you explain to them why you can't or why you do, without going into an elaborate situation, it's like, I have a problem with autographs. I mean, I sign them, but I don't like it because I read an article once that said only 5% of all autographs can be found 2 weeks later, because it's not the autograph they want, it's the moment of your time.
They have to have some reason to come near you.
Yeah, it's a way of saying hello to you without rejection. And the problem is, I usually try to explain. I say, well, how about a handshake? Would that be sufficient? Because I'm running very late, and once I start it, it has to be a big thing.
That's actual contact.
Well, and then it's a conversation, and most people understand it. Every now and then you get somebody who doesn't understand it. But I found that if I'm going to be happy with my life, I have to be able to stand up for the things that I believe in. And I feel that I'm giving them something in exchange for this not doing something else. And there are going to be some people I will offend, but as a rule, most people who have any sensibility at all understand and accept it.
Can you think of anything, Kenny, that you still want that you can't get? Maybe because you're successful you can't get?
I'd like a relationship with my son, which I think someday I will have. I think that it's a very unusual situation that, my marriage wasn't that great. Wasn't that bad. I mean, the sad thing is I remember the good times. That's all I remember. And whatever happened, happened. And it's one of those sticky situations to where a person knows the only way they can touch someone is through a child, and they use that child. That's my interpretation, and I could be wrong. But, I figure the day will come when he will want to know whether I am what has been presented or whether I am what I present,
Are you what am I trying to say? Prevented from contact with him by legally or
no, not legally. No, not legally.
By the way, I don't think these things are anybody's business. So
no, I don't mind. I really have nothing to hide.
I feel the public's right to know does not exist. That's my philosophy. But
well,
if you want to talk with
it's so funny with me because from day one in this business, I don't feel I've ever tried to hide anything, and consequently, I don't have to worry about things showing up and then saying, "Oh yeah, well, the reason I said that was." So. As far as my feelings go on this thing, I'm not prevented by law. I actually went to court once before, and it was so devastating to him, the strife between us pulling and tugging. And I just said, okay, when the time comes, you'll know where to find me, because it's not what you call low profile. You'll be able to find me. And he's 18 now, and I feel reasonably sure that sooner or later it'll work out. I would like to believe that in him.
Are any of your relatives ashamed of you because of your police record? I could only find one fur heist in your past. I bet you're not willing to talk about that.
Okay. Shackle me down and talk to me. That was a very funny incident, because it actually probably kept me from getting killed. Would you like to go to a commercial on this here? This sounds like a National Enquirer headline. But what happened is I'd never, believe this or not, until I went to high school, never skipped a day of school. So my opening day in high school, two guys say to me, hey, all they're going to do is enrollment today. Let's skip school. So I thought, boy, this is big. This is big time for me in high school. This is a big thing. So a friend of ours had a car. We borrowed his car, skipped school, went skinny dipping about 40 miles from where we were. And as it turns out, some guy, we had driven through this neighborhood, some guy had heisted the furs from this Ben Wolfman Fur Company truck in Houston. And the driver spotted us driving by and said, these kids are supposed to be in school. I'll just take down their license number and say, well, I don't know. All I know is I saw this car drive by with these kids. So they blamed us for it. So my second day in school, 3 detectives with big pistols come and take me out of class. Well, now, number one, it got me kicked out of that school because I was in the wrong district anyhow. So they send me to another school, and for a solid week, every day, detectives take me out of class. Well, this was a tough school. Well, nobody messed with me for 3 years. They thought, boy, if these detectives are coming over, this is big stuff.
You couldn't have hired anybody to set you up better.
It was unbelievable, because I was really frightened to death in this school, because everybody carried a gun or a knife, And here I am.
And those are just the teachers.
I'm trying to sing a few songs and play a few sports and get through school. And everybody's at afternoon getting stabbed. And
where was this school?
Houston.
In Houston. Okay. By the way, as we sit here now, I think we may have revealed earlier, you're about to go up and pick that thing up.
That's right.
Would you pick it up now, by the way, just show the proper way of holding it for anybody who wants to. The strings face out, I believe. I just realized.
Perfect.
Are your...
Is that exciting? That's your basic.
Yeah, to put it politely, are your guts churning at all because you have to go upstairs pretty soon and face the thousands of people
No, I don't get nervous.
whose feet we hear stomping now?
saying, send him home, send him home.
No
I don't get
butterflies,
nervous.
no moths?
I have never, the only time I get nervous is if I'm going into a situation that I've never been in before, and there's some unexpected element. I think another thing that would frighten me, for some reason or other, is to play at the White House. Only because, not because of the intimidation of the people involved, but it's hard for me to believe that that group of people would care anything about my music. I have a feeling I would be there for the wrong reasons. It's like, oh, he's got a name, let's bring him in, or see what happens. And I mean, I think the closest I came was with Jimmy Carter. I felt that he might know who I was, you know.
On the HBO special, do you have sole control over the content? And,
yeah, I mean, pretty much. I think that I've been, not just me, I mean, me and my management and people that have helped us put all these things together, we've been right so far, and I think they give you sole control until you're wrong. Once you're wrong, then somebody will say, okay, we'll do this under these conditions. But and we've been right so far.
What's the trick of doing this kind of special to make it look good, so the viewer thinks he's, some things are done so that you need to feel that you're there, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't know whether you won't.
Basically,
what I'm trying to say is, do you have ideas about how they should be shot, how they should be...
What we try to do, in this case, and one of my favorite profundities is that a smart man doesn't necessarily have all the answers, but he knows where to find them. So it's not necessarily that I know how to shoot it, but we've got Jeff Margolis is going to shoot it, and he's very good.
Yeah.
And I've seen his work, and I trust his judgment enough, so I don't have to make every decision that goes on. But if I felt they were going in the wrong direction, I would then get involved. But basically what we're trying to do is just do a show that creates the atmosphere between me and the audience, which is really what I sell. And if we do that, then I think we will have accomplished what it is that we set out to do. Do it as exciting as we can with some new little innovations as far as production factors and so forth that will on film transfer differently than in a live show. And I'm not going to tell you what they are.
You won't tell me?
You're going to have to
Can I
watch.
guess?